Ladies and gentlemen, SideStrafe back with some more War Thunder ground forces. This is, of course, closed beta test, and everything is subject to change. Now, today we're going to take a look at the realistic battle mode included within the game, as well as the Russian heavy tank KV-1. Now, as this is the realistic battle mode, you'll find that the tank handling is a bit different than what you'll find in arcade mode. This is, of course, similar to how the plane handling within the Air Force's portion of the game differs greatly from realistic and full real battles. Now, with that said, another major aspect to realistic battles is that you do not respawn, which means one tank, one life, and it is indeed best that you err on the side of caution, as the game lacks a hit point system as well. Now, as you're about to see, patience is a virtue. That and the fact that, well, I can't get up this hill.
I need support. On target. Go ahead. The enemy is preparing for artillery barrage. Repeat, the enemy is preparing for artillery barrage.
I hereby dub thee Green Meanie. Now, this KV-1, of course, trying to shake hands there, say hello. Germans weren't having any of that. This beast, of course, weighs in at 44 tons and historically was prone to mechanical problems. Here we won't have to deal with that, but it is indeed slow. Now, it's never a bad idea to roll in pairs. You never know what the other guy will see in your glorious travels. Perhaps a lovely castle, countryside, trees, and a variety of shrubbery. Or maybe just a Panzer IV that's flipped over onto its turret.
It serves him right.
In that case, I must agree, good sir, it does indeed serve him right. Welcome to the land of physics. Now, as we roll through here, you may have noticed that most of my targets have been German, and that's because this is, of course, realistic battle. Now, in the past, War Thunder featured a mode called Historical Battles, which this replaces. Historical Battles was, well, more historically accurate. You would see the Axis versus the Allies. Now, in realistic battles, they had made it so that it was possible for the British and Americans to fight against Germans and Russians, for one example at least. Consider it alternate history, if you will. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that mode. I much preferred the way Historical Battles was, but it was difficult to get into a game. The queues were very long, and I do understand why they've made this change. Now, as this is a closed beta test, we really have no idea what's in store for ground forces, or even War Thunder as a whole. Part of me hopes that Gaijin reintroduces a true historical battle mode, otherwise we'll have to continue using the daily event modes, which within the Air Force's portion of the game, for the most part, have been historically accurate. Now, unless you're falling off the side of a cliff, this is about as fast as you're ever going to see this KV-1 travel, which means it's not great for scouting or flanking maneuvers. However, it is perfect for taking and holding capture points, which was mostly my intention throughout these battles. Also note that while the KV is good for attack and defense situations, it's not amazing by itself. Its lack of speed and maneuverability mean that it can be easily flanked by faster light and medium tanks, thereby exposing its weak spots. Now, also keep in mind that it is using an older 76.2mm gun, a version lower than the one found on the T-34 1941. It's using the L-11. Now, this L-11, it's not bad. It can typically get the job done against most of the tanks currently in closed beta, but when fighting itself, other KVs, it's not fantastic, and you're definitely going to have to look for those weak spots. Now, some of you may have noticed that that little X still exists near the aiming circle and, of course, in sniper mode. It's a bullet drop indicator and penetration identifier, if you will, and we thought that it would be removed for the realistic battle mode. However, as this is closed beta test, I can only assume that it will be removed at a later date, as it is something that I've heard discussed on live streams. Now, as we come around this bend, you'll notice that there's some smoke in the distance, which means that we're about to see a wreck that has remained on the battlefield. Now, many of you had criticized the fact that wrecks would disappear within arcade battles, and that's of course due to performance reasons. If you have a game mode where you can respawn multiple times, all those wrecks are going to start to add up, and that's going to be a major performance hit, especially in a beta test that's not very polished. Now, we don't know if that's going to change in the future, but here we can see, at least in realistic battles, that some wrecks do remain. Now, I say some because I have seen a few disappear. Whether that's a glitch or intentional, I have no idea. But again, ladies and gentlemen, always keep in mind that beta is beta, and anything and everything is subject to change. Now, another thing I'm sure many of you have noticed by now is there aren't any planes in the sky trying to terrorize me every second of the day, and I believe that's due to the fact that we're playing realistic battles. It's possible that the planes are just not available for selection within this mode, but it's also possible that people just aren't choosing them because, well, this is a very limited closed beta test for ground forces, and I'm sure most people are wanting to get their hands on an armored vehicle. On top of that, everything you've seen within arcade mode even is a proof of concept. We have no idea if that's how planes and tanks are meant to interact. We have no idea if that's how it's going to be in open beta or when the game goes live. It could be completely different. It could just be tanks versus tanks for a few months and then planes are added later. This is just their way of saying, hey, we have the game engine, we can do this, let's see how it goes. And they're just trying to get ideas right now and polish the code behind it. However, I will admit that shooting those suckers out of the sky is mighty satisfying. As we make our final approach, we run into yet another KV-1, very popular tank within the realistic battle mode, and he's decided to apply a few decals to his vehicle. I think we'll call him Captain Snowflake. I'm not sure that that's Stalin approved. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you've enjoyed this look at the War Thunder Ground Forces closed beta test and, of course, the Russian KV-1 heavy tank. I definitely look forward to bringing you a whole lot more Ground Forces coverage and the tanking with standards that I think everyone deserves. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you on the next one.